If you have finally decided to read Erich Fromm's The Anatomy of Human Destructiveness, then I highly recommend reading it in tandem with this grandiose book, which is Friedrich Engels' The Origin of Family, Private Property, and the State. So I have it here in Russian. And this is a brilliant book, absolutely brilliant, and it is written in a very accessible language. I obviously also recommend reading Kropotkin's Mutual Aid as a Factor of Evolution, as I have already mentioned multiple times. And in my video on the aggressiveness, I do talk about these two books mainly, The Anatomy of Human Destructiveness and Mutual Aid as a Factor of Evolution. And I did mention this book, The Origin of Family, Private Property, and the State, in one of my videos about feminism. And obviously I didn't give it justice, I just try to promote it as I often do. But this book really gives a lot of insight on the history of the modern family and what we view as monogamy, or monogamous relationships. And even though the anthropological research is outdated, I still think that much of what Engels is saying in this book still stands, especially from an ethical and philosophical standpoint. You can see the connection of patriarchy to private property. You can see how from what he called group marriage, the monogamous marriage emerged, so to speak, from the economic circumstances and the desire of men to leave their legacy and leave their material belongings to their offspring. And when I was examining this reasoning, I want to leave my belongings to my offspring only, and I don't want my material riches to belong to anyone but my family. This, to me, was a key to understanding the origins of exploitations as well, because it is egocentrism, first and foremost, because that's the easiest explanation to me. These people were egocentric. They wanted everything to belong to them, not only in this life, but also after they've passed. They wanted their material possessions to stay in their bloodline, so to speak. And when you look at an earlier type of a family, the family that Fromm calls matricentral, or matri-central, which was not a matriarchy. It was just that it was much easier to trace back to your mother rather than your father because of the group marriage that was practiced in the ancient times. So you see that they didn't really care much about material possessions and who would inherit them because they didn't have the capacity to produce such riches to begin with. And with the emergence of agriculture, and more specifically animal breeding, those riches began to accumulate. So these men who would accumulate a lot of cattle and sheep, they wanted this livestock to belong to their sons, most likely. But in the earlier societies, in the earlier communities, you wouldn't see that. And they're still present in the modern day and age, and this is the information I'm deriving from Fromm's Anatomy of Human Destructiveness. There's still societies present where private property is not practiced and people are not interested in the accumulation of goods. So all of those arguments to the human nature, they don't necessarily stand, at least for a certain proportion of the population of the planet Earth. So I highly recommend all of these three books, but if you're reading The Anatomy of Human Destructiveness, once you get to the second big section where he looks at the anthropological studies, I suggest to pair them up with Engels' The Origin of Family, Private Property, and the State.